There was a woman who adopted a child from Russia and basically stuck him on a plane with a sign that said "take him back" and threw him on a plane and sent him back to Russia. And of course, on the surface, that sounds there's no help. And the only help out there, the only thing you hear constantly is you need to be a better parent. You need to be a better parent. You need to be a better parent. And the guy's like, well, no, we want to breed it. It's a mutt. Why would you want to breed it? Well, they're cute. We just, we want to have puppies. I want the kids to have the experience. And I'm kind of like.
The phone rings. The news is devastating. The baby boy you are about to adopt won't be coming home. In fact, he may not survive. What would you do? This was the call Dana Mikel received just before adopting her son from Ethiopia. But Dana is no stranger to life's curveballs. Dana truly embodies kindness and selflessness, a rare soul who goes beyond the ordinary to make the world an extraordinary place. This is who I met when I met Dana Mikel. She has adopted and cared for special needs children for the past 20 years. And if that weren't enough, Dana is also the co-founder of ARRF San Diego, an animal rescue dedicated to saving dogs and other animals in need. Whether it's rescuing lives or creating a loving family, Dana's compassion knows no limits. Is Dana an angel? Absolutely. But she's also a straight shooter and she tells it like it is. Here's Dana, raw and real. Can you share a little bit about what led you to adopt children, especially those who were considered maybe too much for others?
It started long ago. I mean, the first time I remember wanting to adopt was actually in high school, because a classmate of mine had, her folks had adopted 2 kids from Korea. And that was kind of the first time I'd heard of something like that. And it was, I can remember it, and I can't remember much at 56, but I do remember sitting there and talking to her about it, and I just thought it was so cool, like it was so interesting. And then, as the world turns, I ended up meeting somebody and marrying somebody who was also interested in that. We ended up going down that path after having one biological child.
That's like destiny, finding somebody who aligns with the same, ethics and things that you want in life. That's crazy. Like that, not a lot of us get that. Again, you're blessed and you deserve to be blessed. How many children do you have that are yours? I think you said 1, and how many have you adopted?
I have 1 biological, and they're all mine. I have to say that. And then there's 5.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, no judgment. It's just something people say, and it's, we always just inform.
Thank you.
So 4 from Ethiopia, 1 from Russia. My little daughter from Russia came home. She was my second. Brought home. She was the child that was brought home first after my biological son. But she's she's the 4th oldest.
Again, someone from growing up in foster care. You're always, and it's a little different, obviously, from adoption. But like, it warms my heart that you just said that. That they, but I guess for the audience's sake, I just wanted to know, like, they're all the same. You're absolutely right. Yeah. Dana, what was it like stepping into the role of parent to children with special needs?
Special needs is a very broad term. And
okay.
So, Sam, I have a biological son. He came out very typical, grew up very typical. Of course, I thought he was the sun and the moon, and he was special and potty trained early, and he was perfect and so smart. And then we decided to adopt because I was having some miscarriages, and instead of going down that whole path of in vitro and
in vitro, yeah,
we'd already talked about it. We'd always wanted to adopt, so it. The world just said, okay, well, we're going to push in that direction. We were going to adopt from Korea because that had kind of been stuck in my head. That's what I'd kind of always thought about as being where I wanted to go. And then we started that process with an adoption agency, and then we switched gears and ended up going to Russia because I found this book called The Russian Word for Snow, which kind of moved me, and Jim, and I'm part Russian, so I'm one grandparent's Russian. So, and then my first adopted daughter came home, and I think we talked about this before. I'll call her T. I don't know if I should use their names. I mean, they know their stories. She was, I suppose, in most minds, special needs, but not on the surface, meaning she has some mental health challenges, but not, you wouldn't look at Tess and see anything that would indicate a special need. And I think that not everybody, most people that adopted from Russia had similar experiences. The kids come home with something called reactive attachment disorder, and it causes them to have a lot of behavioral and academic, intellectual issues. So I would throw her at that time into the category of special needs, but we didn't know that at the time. Like, none of the kids that came home to us we thought of initially as special needs. But then when you start getting into it and kids start coming home, kids have needs. All these kids have needs, and some of them more special than others. So it's a pretty broad category, but I'd say Tessa's challenges would if you categorize them, would put her in that category of, her having, extra special needs. And then C came home next. She was a very, very young baby, and very, I don't want to say easy, because kids aren't easy, but just very typical. I'll use the word typical. And then Noah came home under really interesting circumstances. We knew Noah had had a medical crisis in Ethiopia, and when we brought him home, he was only 5-ish months old, and they were trying to cancel the adoption because they said he was going to die. And long story short, we ended up, asking them, just, we're not going to hold you guys responsible, but let us get him. Let us go get him. And
oh my God.
I can get more into the detail of the process of adoption. There's just so much red tape and so much bureaucracy around it that it was like, how do we get this kid home fast enough to get him to an American hospital? And the Ethiopian court system jumped through a lot of hoops for us to get him on a plane the next, like my husband flew out the next day, jumped through a bunch of hoops. Everybody jumped through a bunch of hoops. We got him home. So we knew that there might be consequences to his medical health, and what the consequences of that was a diagnosis of severe autism and intellectual disabilities, as well as I could probably name 4, 5, or 6, and then more recently epilepsy. So did we know? Yes. Would we have changed anything? No. That kid's my heart, but we didn't go. Very honestly, we didn't go, oh, here's a child that, has a significant special need that we're going to go, that's the child we want. We had actually met Noah. And then A came home a couple years later. He was already older. And he was, with the help of a lot of friends, he's just an amazing human being. And he was just very typical again. And then in 2011, Kay came home, and she'd had a lot of trauma, like trauma that most people wouldn't understand unless they'd been through it, and especially coming from a place where there's no resources at all.
Do you mean abusive SA, things like that?
Okay. Yeah, and again, kind of. I'll tell you more about her because it's very interesting story without getting into like specifics. We don't really know what happened to her, and I don't think we'll ever know what happened to her because I don't think she's ever going to fully honestly talk to me about it. We know what the agency said, we know what the medical reports said, we know, but what actually happened or what she'd been through, we do know that she was given up by an actual adoptive parent in Ethiopia. And I've actually been in contact with her adopted brother over there. So I know a bit about it, but it's very interesting. It's a very interesting story. And that could take up the whole podcast. So I'll just set
Yeah.
that aside
Well,
for now.
no, I mean, this is you've said two things that I have a lump in my throat right now, so I'm trying not to cry. There's a whole agency, and correct me if I'm wrong, of people that can return the child, and then this agency will rehome them.
I know that there's rehoming going on. I know about it. I've actually looked into it, and I'll say right now, because it sounds so. People will look at that on the surface. In fact, I think there's been like 2020 or 60 Minutes or someone did a story on it. There's
Yeah,
been multiple
yeah.
stories on it, and it comes across as being a very, very, very heartless thing to do. And I'll be very, very. I am the most honest person anyone's
Yeah.
ever going to meet. We looked into that for Kadist. She was way, 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 way over our heads, and the behaviors and the dangerous behaviors to the other kids put us in that mindset. And I've talked to so many parents, whether they end up institutionalizing the kids, whether they end up rehoming the kids. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking, and it's so difficult because
I would imagine.
there's no help for you. When you have a kid that comes out of a really traumatic situation and goes into a typical family with other kids, and you have no training other than, what we all go through in life.
Yeah.
And then you have this kid that is just doing things that you're like, what just happened?
Okay, so rehoming, I thank you, gave me a new perspective on it, because selfishly I'm like, they're rehoming, like
And
you
maybe
said.
some people are, I don't know, but
Well-
the people I know, it's been tried to light the house on fire when we were in it, sexually abusing kids.
That's what I'm
Hurting
talking
them.
about.
Yeah.
That's hurting. Yes. Now we're talking about your other kids that are in danger, and
Yeah.
it's a safety, and that's a whole different story. And I understand that.
And they don't.
However, not taking out the garbage on time is not a reason to rehome somebody, which I think there was something like that on that TV show that you just mentioned. I don't know, maybe it
Yeah.
wasn't a TikTok, maybe it was a TV show. I kind of tuned it out because I didn't want to think about it. I'm like, it's hard. Even having this conversation with you, Dana, right now is hard. It's hard because
it is.
it's
And it's important, though.
It's
just-
oh God, it's so
No,
important.
because I think people have a different tolerance. You know what I mean? And well, years ago, and I want to. You can direct me in which ways you want to talk about what you want to talk about. I have so much information because I have so many people that I talk to. But years ago, it was all over the news. This woman, and I think that kind of started a lot of these shows. And I knew people personally who were on some of these shows, and the media played them in a very selfish light. And I knew in a lot of these cases that wasn't the case. But there was a woman who adopted a child from Russia, and basically stuck him on a plane with a sign that said "Take him back," and threw him on a plane, sent him back to Russia. And of course, on the surface, that sounds about as awful a thing as you could ever do.
Right.
When you looked at it a little deeper, again, there was no help. This woman was like, "This kid is destroying us, ruined my marriage, hurting the other kids," whatever it was, and there's no solution to that. So you bring home a child who has this early childhood trauma, who by no fault of them are just damaged to a point where they can't really live in a typical household, to a normal parent who thought they were doing something like
Saving a child.
good. And then
Right.
kid that's trying to bring the house down around them, or whatever it is, and there's no help. And the only help out there, the only thing you hear constantly is, you need to be a better parent, you need to be a better parent, you need to be a better parent. And nobody can give you any solutions, nobody can give you any respite, nobody can give you any hope that there's going to be a change in the future. And I can speak to this, I can speak to the hope, because I'm on the other side of some of these issues. But really, really, really honestly, I mean, it's when we brought one of our children home, I remember talking to the agency and just being like, I don't know what we're going to do. And my therapist was saying, because we were in therapy, she was in therapy, And my therapist was saying, get her out of your house. This is a dangerous person. Get her out of your house. Well, how do you do? What are your options? Where do you do? What do you do? So you go back and you say we went to the agency and we said, we need help, whether it's counseling, whether it's like other people we can talk to, and their answer is, well, the first agency was like, oh, no other parents have ever said this, which was completely up because they didn't want to get into any kind of, and the other agency was like, well, and all putting all this like sunshine on it. Like, you just need to hold them more. You just need to, well, kids from these hard situations, they don't trust. So holding them makes them very uncomfortable. Loving them makes them very untrusting. I mean, it's this kind of a flip of what a normal parent would do, and you can't do it. You almost have to divorce yourself from it in order to parent them properly, and it's hard.
Yes, really. Dana, it is. C is still in your life, right?
All of them, in some degree, are still in my life.
Okay, that's
and I know I'm kind of hitting you with a bunch of like, but there's so many positives on the flip side of this,
there is. And not to interrupt you, but Dana, there is. The reason why I'm saying is she's still with you is because you didn't give up. And you never gave up.
She wasn't the tough one. She's my, easiest in some ways.
Okay, I met one of your children while I was there. That's not C, is it?
Tall, skinny.
Yes.
Beautiful. That's C.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Shush.
She's
wow.
No, she's not the one that she was a sorry. You knew you were going to get dogs in the back.
Listen, we haven't even gotten to your dog rescue yet.
She came home as an infant. She was like 5 months old. She'd been held, she'd been cared for to the best of her ability in Ethiopia. And she came home and she was very typical, very easy to be. She was a baby. She was just easy. Noah, even though he has autism, still very typical.
I met Noah, I think. He was at the table when I was there, yeah.
Yeah, he's, and then my last one that came home, Kay, she's the one. She was 11 when she got here, maybe even older, because birthdays, they don't tell you real birthdays. We actually don't years, and I think she might have even been a little bit older. But just
really,
no attachment, no, massive amounts of trauma, and that just kind of sets them into this pattern of negativity, mistrust. You can talk to therapists; they'll tell you like wise self and wounded inner child, and how strong the wounded inner child overwrites your wise self. There's all sorts of, I've been to so much therapy, I could probably write books. But
same.
She struggled in a lot of ways, and my little girl from Russia struggled with reactive attachment. And reactive attachment's a little bit different in that these are the kids that weren't given what they needed as infants, and so their brains don't develop cause and effect thinking. I'm probably throwing way too much.
No, you're not. Audiences do need to hear this, especially anyone who's thinking of possibly adopting across the world, or adopting special needs, or someone who's been traumatized. For me, just to answer, go back to what you were saying, it's not a lot because I've been down that road, and the trust issues, the everything you're talking about, I've been down that road to some degree. Not the only thing I think is different is that I was born here in the United States. When I was finally not adopted, I was adopted per se because they're the last family I was with. They changed my life, but to this day, my sister says, you were a feral child, feral. I was 14 when they finally got me. And by that time I'd been in and out of foster homes, orphanages, this, that, group homes. And I was a mess. And somehow I think by the grace of God, I wasn't, as bad as I probably should have been given everything. But they just cared for me so well that I got lucky on that last home. And she had to teach me almost how to be a person. Yeah. And I'm sure that's what you've been through, that when you're getting older children, I didn't know how to please and thank yous weren't in my vocabulary. You hit the nail on the head. When someone's being nice to you, it's almost like, okay, what's this going to cost me?
Yeah.
What's this going to cost me in abuse or what? Thanks, but no thanks. Like, don't bother. And it takes a long time. So you're not throwing anything at me. And I hope, and this
Yeah.
is why I wanted you on the show, is I just really want people to see that there are angels like you. And I know you're downplaying what you've done, but you've taken all these kids in that, whether they had special needs or whether, let's just put that aside, they had nowhere else to go. And they were provided a loving home. I've been to your home. I feel the love. You have kids from down the street running into your house, you know? I mean, you're an
That's 'cause I have
angel.
puppies. Who
Well,
wouldn't
yeah,
come-
well, that too. But still, if you were a poo-poo pants, no, these kids
Yeah.
wouldn't be coming in. Kids know. They know. The child that you were going to adopt, but they weren't going to let you adopt him because he was going to die, reminds me of when I adopted my puppy, one of my other puppies, which was also a rescue. They were like, don't take that puppy because he's going to die. And I was like, no, now I need that puppy. Yes, no, I need to try. You're just going to toss them in the garbage. And I mean, I'm not saying that's what they were saying, but is that kind of sort of on a parallel universe what you were feeling when you adopted?
Well, Ethiopia is, at that time, I don't know exactly now, it's the second poorest country in the world. So, and again, it's kind of a perspective thing. I think people can look and say, were they just going to throw them out and give up? Maybe. Not because they wanted to, but there's babies dying every day all over the country. You know what I mean? It's not that there's a lack of caring, there's a lack of care. I think at that time we looked it up and there was one doctor for every 200,000 people.
Wow.
There is no medical care. There's just, it's so, at least at that time, I know things have changed, I think for the better. I think there's some infrastructure there now. But, the desperate situation, they all go off at once.
We're going to talk about that in just a minute, but go ahead.
Yeah. The desperation is just, it's heartbreaking. And they have a perception of Americans too. And they didn't think we'd want a defective child. You know what I mean? And not that was the way they looked at that child. It was the way they thought we would look at that child, if that makes sense. So when Jim got over there, I think the agency was more I do think this agency is closed down now. I do think they were very heartless in the way they did their business across the board.
As an example.
On 2020 came from this agency. Their opinion was they are doing God's work and so they are right. And but God never had a say in it. You know what I mean? It was just in their minds. That's what God wanted them to do. So that no matter what they did, they were right. And I know they did a lot of things that were questionable. To watch them and watch people we knew in Ethiopia talking on 2020 about stuff that was going on that this agency was involved with. But I think in their opinion, the call that came to us was simply, he has pneumonia, he lost oxygen, we got him back, he's going to die, we're canceling your adoption. There was no consideration for how we felt. There was no consideration for him. It was that simple in their minds. It was a commodity more than a person. And I'm very glad they're closed down now. But I was considered their worst client ever, and I kind of take pride in that because I was like, I was always in their face, good. What about this? What about this? Well, anyway, I remember because I was driving when I got this call, and we had already met Noah because when we picked Satina up 2 months earlier, and so we had been at the orphanage, we had held him, we had pictures of him, and I was like, you're just like, wait a minute, what? What are you talking about? And I'm like, well, and I called, I said, why are you canceling it? Let's get him to America. Let's get him some good old American health care. And they could, they're having a hard time wrapping their head around that. They're like, well, you want him? And we're like, of course we want him. What a stupid question. And so I called Jim and he said, all right. And he goes, let me get on a plane tomorrow. Let's get there. And he flies. He's so much better traveler than I am. and I had Satina at home, and I still had CT and S Sam at home. Uh, so anyway, we he hopped on a plane, got there the next day. Everyone in Ethiopia, he was such a hero to them. He was such a hero to them. Like, I was hearing about it later that, like, your husband, he's amazing. It was so awesome to hear that, because when we went back to pick up other children, they were still talking about us coming to get Noah. So the people in Ethiopia were like, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And they, again, I can't get into the entire court process, but it's very burdensome, not only because it's long and the paperwork, but like that year was their millennial, and so the court's closed for 2 months, or it's the rainy season and everything closes for 2 weeks, or there's a holiday and nobody comes to work for 3 days. It's different than us, where it's 9 to 5, it's Monday through Friday. So the courts have been closed for 2 months, and they just opened, and you get your court date whenever they give it to you, and it could be months off to when you can pick up your child. They moved him up. They got us through the embassy. They did everything they could to get him home. And then my husband, he didn't even bring enough. I had given him so many clothes, and he basically got off the plane a few days later with this naked child because Noah had such bad diarrhea, and he was so sick. And he'd gone through like every outfit that I'd given Jim, and he just kind of in the airport just kind of hands us, me and my mother-in-law, and like this little naked child, and we're like, oh, and I brought him clothes, wrapped him all up, and the airport had given him blankets, the airlines had given him blankets and stuff, but he was just, everything was coming out of him constantly, and he was just so skinny, he's exactly what you would expect, with the big belly and the malnutrition and the big head, but kind of, poor kiddo. My mother-in-law just grabbed him and took him into the bathroom, and she's a nurse, and she just wrapped him up and did everything and got him all ready for us. And I can't even remember what the question was, but
I think I forgot too. I was so enwrapped with your story.
It was an interesting story. But again, the positive and the good. We got him back. We were told he had an enlarged heart. We told he had an enlarged liver. We were told all sorts of things. And he did have brain oxygen loss to his brain, and I know that is part of why he is who he is today. But once we got him, we immediately got him to the hospital the next day, and they couldn't find any of those kind of like mechanical things wrong with him. He had a fever. He had not scabies. Was it scabies? I don't know. It's kind of like something that gets under your skin.
It's scabies. I think it's scabies.
Yeah, scabies and rickets, and he had all sorts of things. But they got him, again, good old American medicine. We got him all, cleaned up and fixed up within a few days, and and he developed relatively typical after that. But watching him next to Satina, you could tell there was something, and where other kids kind of take off, he just kind of plateaued at a very young age, and then developed a lot of the other autistic type symptoms, the vocalizations and the needing to carry things around, hyper fixated on things, and never did develop to speak. He's considered nonverbal. He has some words. He's considered some, I guess, marginally verbal. He does have a few words, like he can say water or chips or hot dogs, but he can't have a conversation. So, but he's 17 now.
And you're his mom.
Yeah, and he's doing great. He's doing great.
I think you probably don't even realize it, but, well, maybe you do. To your children, you've given them not just a home, but a chance at something more, hope, a life. I mean, it's incredible. Thank you, Dana. Thank you for taking kids that, again, whether they had something wrong or not, or the fact that you're giving a child a home is incredibly selfless.
He's such a joy, He's a tough one. We have our moments.
Well, kids, like you said, we're
Yeah.
all tough. They're all
But,
tough, should I
yeah,
say?
he is a blessing. He is an absolute blessing. You know.
When do you think? When did you first see yourself as an agent of change in their lives, if you ever did? Have you ever stopped to think about that?
It's a question I think a lot of us have. There is so much, and again, I'll apologize because I'm so honest. I don't think a lot of other people will talk in these terms, but I don't really care what other people think of me per se. So I'll go ahead with this thought and judge me as you will, especially with the ones that were challenging. I have been not a great parent, at times. Definitely not a great parent at times. So there's always this question in our minds that I say about people like me who've adopted kids who have significant challenges. More the behavioral challenges than I would say like, ID or autism, ASD or whatever. We've had so many difficulties and we've found so many times where we've say lost our shit or have been a bad parent or have thought about say rehoming or saying it out loud, whatever it is. By the time you get to this stage where they're older, you can never look at yourself as, oh, I did something good, because there's so much, but I did something, but I was, bad, or I didn't handle the situation well. At least I think most people who've had these challenges and people that I've talked to, you always look back and you say, you're always trying to get rid of the guilt for not being a better parent. Because that's like when your kids do something wrong, you feel like you could change that. And that's not necessarily true, especially with kids with traumatic backgrounds. In fact, that's what my therapist used to say: give up on the outcome, give up on the outcome, give up on the outcome. Nothing you do is going to change this. This is, but as a parent, we take that very seriously. And so when your child does something, say like become a drug addict, wait a minute, is that my fault? Where do I fault? What part of that's me? So how can I think that I was an agent of change or a good person if something I did may have caused this problem to happen? And again, we get over it and we talk each other through it and we try and pull out the good and pull out the, and we have lovely people like you telling us, no, you did a good thing. But, as a parent, you're so tied to the outcome. Did I get my kid into college? Did I get my kid have a good marriage? Whatever it is, is my kid a good person? Whatever, the buzzwords are today that our kids are supposed to be, if they don't meet those goals or if they haven't met them yet, like that's where the stage is for me. Some of them are coming true. Some of them aren't there yet. You can't look at yourself as being, I don't think, an agent for change. You kind of have to look at yourself and you spend a lot of time trying to get over some of the guilt of those times that you weren't. And that overshadows maybe some of the good maybe that you did, if that makes sense.
It does. No, I think you sound like a lot of parents. I hear it every day from my students' families. You're not alone in that thought process. What you have that's different is you went one step beyond because you are giving a little bit more to people who didn't have it, to beings that didn't seem like they had a chance, especially the one, I won't say his name, but from, that came off the plane with diarrhea and you take him in your arms. Let me be the first of 1,000 people who probably told you this, Dana, but you are a flipping angel. Like, I'm listening to your story, trying not to cry, because I'm like, gosh, it's so sad. It's like, it's not making me cry that all the stuff you've done. It's making me cry that I want you to understand that you are awesome, that you are amazing. In fact, I'm going to make you say it. Say, I am awesome.
I'll never do it.
Yes.
No, I think I have some appreciation for it. And I'll give you an example since we're one of my daughters, my T, my little Russian girl, this is a kid who I will very much admit at times I wanted her, I wish I'd never met her. Our early childhood was, I went from having this little boy, biological son who was easy and smart, and to this child who shouldn't take direction. She couldn't understand it. She had a lot of sensory issues, but I didn't understand that at the time. So we'd go outside and she'd scream, 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 scream. And I can very honestly say there were times that I hated her. I struggled with her so hard. You'd do something, and again, she was just reactive attachment disorder to the nth degree. You couldn't do anything nice for her without it coming back and biting you. She had no trust for adults. She had no, and this is from when she was teeny tiny. Just constant challenges, and then she went through a whole depression phase. We were in and out of mental hospitals for a year, and then the drugs started, and then and then it's drug addiction. And every step of the way, everything I did would get thrown back in my face. Everything I tried to do. But now, just recently, after a year being clean, she's got a job. She's moving into a new place. She's going to be managing a rehab house. She's going to be a house manager, which is incredible. She's working at a rehab as a tech, which is incredible. She's going back to school to become an addiction counselor, which is incredible. And after 20 years of just, losing hope, gaining hope, losing hope, gaining hope, seeing snippets, then I was thinking about this just yesterday because I knew I was coming on this, am I at all responsible for that? Did I play a part in that? And I would say, there were times, that I was not a good parent to this child. And I don't blame myself for that anymore because I don't think anybody could have been. She was so difficult. But I look at it and I said, the one thing I can say that maybe I did right was I'm still here. No matter what, I stayed. Want to be, if they want me, I'm here. I didn't just say, and there were definitely times when I wish I could have and been like, please don't ever call me again.
Right, but you didn't.
I always gave them somebody to call or come back to. And I think based on stuff she's sent me and told me, I think that helped. And I hope, I think I can take a little credit in that, and that makes me happy.
You can. I'm crying again because I'm sorry. I'm a crybaby. You can't because I'm sorry. You can, Dana, because you're there. You didn't give up. Sorry. I'll probably cut this out. Woo. Now we have to talk about dog rescue.
Happy to.
Oh, good Lord.
Dogs are different. Yeah.
I know. They must be. I would imagine just a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Oh God. Okay. Woo. Stop. That was a great. That makes me so happy that and you have everything to do with that. Okay. Woo. She wouldn't have been known that there was hope out there unless you gave it to her, and everyone is on their own journey. That it took 20 years for her. Some other people it takes 5 minutes, 20 minutes, I don't know, but you were there. So yes. Okay. I'm gonna switch gears
I laugh
now.
and I'm embarrassed, so yeah.
Well, you're awesome. I think you're awesome.
Thank you.
Okay. Switching gears, so not just children. You went ahead and, if life wasn't crazy enough, let's start a dog rescue.
I come from a family, we always had a lot of dogs. We always had, we had dogs in the house. My sister actually started showing dogs, like in confirmation, Dobermans, at a very, 11 years old. I mean, she was, and she's a vet now, so it ran in the family. My mom raced horses when she was young. I don't know, we were at the shelter one time and we saw a sign. This was back in Massachusetts. The Massachusetts Humane Society, if a dog was over 8 years old or under 8 weeks old, they just automatically put him to sleep. So there was a really nice woman there. I think her name was Michelle, if I remember right. And she was had gone off and she was trying to find fosters for the dogs over 8, dogs under 8 weeks. And we ended up with Champ, this big 9-year-old lab that some asshole had just dumped at the shelter because the kids were out of the house now. So, and in California, again, this is like other people go to the mall, we go to animal shelters on the weekends. I don't know. We saw a sign for wanting fosters, and for Friends of County Animal Shelter, which is no longer a rescue here, and we started fostering dogs for them, and somehow we managed to start fostering puppies. There wasn't a lot of puppy fosters back then, and back then, like 20 years ago, it wasn't like there is today. Today there's 5,000 rescues out there. Back then in California, there were a few big ones: Focus, FCIA, a few others. And so, I don't know, we just started fostering puppies. That kind of became something we did. We had a good setup for it. And that's what we did. We just foster puppies. Sometimes moms and puppies, mostly just puppies. And, we'd get the call from the shelter. Everything at that point came out of the shelters, Focus. And through a series of events, Focus kind of fell apart, and we ended up opening, a group of us started ARRF, Animal Rescue Resource Foundation.
And that's that's how I got Sam.
In 2007. And so we branched out. We no longer just worked with the shelters. We kept working with the shelters. Our president, Bernice, was the same person. She came over from Focus. Our fundraiser came over. Pretty much anyone who was big at Focus switched over to ARRF. And we expanded. Like, we'll take animals from everywhere. We're also going to support other rescues. We were part of Greater Good for a while, where we'd take, Greater Good collects food from all over the country, like companies like Nutro, and maybe their stuff is going to be expire within not enough time where they can put it in a store, and so they donate it. And so they'd send like literally semis full of food. And one of our founders had a warehouse and he'd store stuff, and then it was just getting it out to other rescues. And San Diego Humane Society does that now. They're amazing. And I just kept fostering. I was just very happy to just be a foster. And then as these things go, people start getting older, people pass away, people retire, and it just became more and more less people on top. Less fosters, and it did become mostly we have a couple of long-term fosters, people that I work with, but we've definitely shrunk. We're not nearly as big, and we don't need to be, because now there's on every corner there's a rescue. There's so many more people involved,
right? There really is, and that's a great thing.
Yeah, we maybe do 100 dogs a year, and that's about it.
That's a lot of dogs, my friend. That's it, just 100 dogs.
And that's saving them, pulling them. But we do everything. We go, and I'm trying to remember, your guys, I think Odie was from El Centro. So there's a rescue out there called Dee's Rescue, really amazing woman. Amazing. That she kind of fell into rescue because she had a kennel, like a for-profit kennel, overnight kennel. And people just started bringing dogs to her, and she ended up as a rescue now. I work on the native reservation. I have some friends that work out there that puppies that aren't finding homes. I work with another rescue in Tijuana. So I help them with a lot of different things, whether it's, finding them places to hold events, or I've done some fostering for them, but mainly I'm more administrative for them. When they need things done in America, I do it because they're south of the border. And and so we just, I did, last week, Friday, not Thanksgiving, but the week before, we did a support event there's a place called Bridge of Hope in San Diego in City Heights. And the ladies that run that, Cece and Sherry, they support the refugee community, people in transition. They have a house down there. They take in donations, and they just kind of help people get their new lives started. And I was talking to them, and I said, can I do a dog-cat event down there and kind of offer support? They're one of the stops for Feeding San Diego. So on Fridays, they do one of those, like where, they come in and, Costco may have donated oranges, and Trader Joe's may have donated whatever. And they have like this huge food distribution. And I went, we brought a bunch of dog and cat stuff down. It was overwhelming. We had no idea. Nobody had any idea what it was going to look like. And it turned into, it was chaos. A lot more people needed help than we thought. We were hoping to give service to about 25 people. It ended up being a lot more than that. And now we have to try and figure out how to do it. Because this is kind of what I want ARRF to morph into. Now that there's a lot of agencies out there doing fostering, I'd rather we kind of morph into a more service industry and be able to offer, whether it's microchips for free or vaccinations, support, whatever it is. I don't think I'll ever stop fostering puppies entirely, and the people that are still fostering will always support. But as we kind of lose our fosters, I do want to kind of morph into something that's more, and I'm experimenting with that. So, a lot of people need help, whether it's feeding their animals, vet care. There's a lot of things we can do to help people that so they don't have to go to the vet and spend as much as maybe they would. Getting a microchip cost me $5. Vaccines cost me $3, and you can do a lot of that. Not to take anything away from the vets, but
Right.
If it's a choice of I'm not going to go and get it done at all, and me giving it for free, then hallelujah, I'll give it to him for free. If I can.
Right. I mean, between the kids and the rescue and everything else in this world, how do you juggle this?
I don't like being bored.
I understand that.
It's kind of a balance because sometimes I get overwhelmed. Sometimes it's hard to not get it to where it's too much. It's hard to find a balance. And you never know what you're going to get. If you get I think it was the year COVID started. Every freaking puppy we got had parvo. I mean, we had 6 different litters, and I know what I'm doing. So people are going to be like, "Oh, well, that's because you have parvo in your house." I know all about parvo. I know that it can stay in the ground for a year. I know how to keep it at bay. The dogs were coming to us with parvo, and we were having to isolate. And it was like we lost out of doing this. Up until that point, I think I'd been doing it for 19 years, and I'd lost maybe 1 puppy. And that year we lost 6. And it was devastating. It was so devastating, Ugh. So that year kind of kicked my butt. And then you kind of, it's one, but you try and regroup a little bit. But the need never goes away. So the phone calls asking you to take more puppies never stops. So you can say, okay, I'm done, I'm burnt out, I'm tired. And then you get another call. Literally the day that ones go home, you've got more coming. And it's worse now than it's ever been in San Diego and LA, as far as I can tell.
Why do you think that is?
People say that it's COVID, people getting dogs during COVID and now giving them up. I haven't seen that myself so much. I'm sure that that's the case in some cases. And these are just my opinions, so please don't send me hateful comments. Anyone who's listening to this, these are just my opinions. And I actually put them out there on TV. Somebody interviewed me the other day. I think that spay-neuter has become way too unaffordable. I don't think because the vets have expenses too, and I'm not ripping on them at all. I'm not going to lay the blame anywhere. But if it costs $700, $800, $900 or more to get a dog spayed and neutered, then people aren't doing it. And so that's just generating, that you've probably seen graphs where, this geometrical, exponential growth of a cat population that's been unneutered and spayed. It's the same thing with the dogs. The other part of that is, and this, again, I'm not laying blame, but there has been a big push by vets and others that dogs shouldn't be spayed and neutered young. So in California, the law is for any rescue or any shelter, although I know some that aren't doing this, and I don't know how or why, they're supposed to be spayed and neutered before they go out the door. Well, we send, as you know, puppies out the door at 8 weeks old, so they're getting spayed and neutered at 8 weeks old, and I am catching such grief. That's too young, that's too young, that's too young. And it's yeah, but on the flip side of that, you have an overpopulation of animals now. So I've looked at the research. I've looked at it pretty closely. And I would say that there is some indication that, like in bigger dogs, maybe hip dysplasia is a little more prominent in a dog that's been neutered young for males. And then in female dogs, actually, spaying young can keep some like gynecological cancers from happening. So there's some benefits to it, but there's such a huge push out there right now from all the vets saying, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. And so that's great. And if it were my dog, or if it was a full bred dog, I probably wouldn't. I'd probably wait a year. But I know me, and I know I'm responsible. Most people, not most, some people, if you give them a dog and it's not spayed and neutered, they may never get it done. Or they may even want to have a litter of puppies because they're cute. I had a litter of puppies last week, and somebody, wanted one. And I said, yeah, they'll be spayed neutered. Well, can we not spay? And I said, oh, well, let me tell you the pros and cons. I'm not. And the guy's like, well, no, we want to breed it. It's a mutt. Why would you want to breed it? Well, they're cute. We just, we want to have puppies. I want the kids to have the experience. And I'm kind of like, okay, I understand where you're coming from, but that's not, as a rescue, that's not what we do.
It seems a little irresponsible because, again, like you said, you don't know where these dogs are going. You don't know their life story. You don't know, they can look great on paper, but who knows? And then, then there's the responsibility of a whole litter of puppies.
I took 9. I did, I think, slightly overcommit to the whole dog thing.
People just don't think sometimes. I'm one of them. I'm not perfect. So.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, you can do is kind of tell them what's what and what you think, and I'm like, this is why we don't do that. This is where we, and he's like, well, that's what we want. I said, well, I'm sorry, good luck, be careful of Craigslist, but good luck,
Yeah.
We're, so those two things I think have made it so that we have just so many more animals out there. I think, those two pieces together, telling people not to spay neuter, and once they're older, not giving people any kind of low cost options. There's very, very, very few low cost options out there. You really have, like the one in San Diego, SD Spay. You have to it's kind of like getting concert tickets. Like, I think it opens up Tuesday morning. You have to get on, and you have to get one of the appointments that day. And then, and I'm sure they do an okay job. We did have some issues with one cat there, but there's just not a lot of low cost options at all. And even taking them south of the border, then you don't really get, I don't think the materials that they have are as safe as the ones they have here, from what I've seen of the dogs getting fixed south of the border. You can get them done there for, a lot less money. But I know because they've asked me to get them stuff. They don't have suture material, and they don't have, painkillers,
Oh.
like that. So, anyway, so what we're running into, and maybe it's just there's also more information out there. Like this year, and this has just done a number on so many of us. There's a couple of shelters up in LA, Apple Valley being probably the worst of the bunch. And, I answered the phone, and it was somebody who they're called networkers. And you can get on Facebook, and they have all these pages for networking, like networking Apple Valley shelter dogs. And what they do is they get the euthanasia list for that day or for the next day. And then they just go out there and they call rescues, and they say, can you pull this dog? Can you pull this dog? Can you pull this dog? Well, for a group like us without a lot of fosters and no physical shelter, they're like, well, we'll find the fosters. And it's like, okay, well, I'll pull the dog then, because you have to be a nonprofit or a rescue to get licensed to pull dogs from these places in most cases. Lancaster, Palmdale, San Bernardino, any of the LA County, Downey, they all do it this way. But Apple Valley's toughest, it's a slaughterhouse. It's a slaughterhouse every day. It's like 10, 12, 15 dogs going on the list. And so these networkers, some of whom are people that you would know, a couple of them are from Hollywood. There's a couple of sportscasters, I think, involved. And then they go out, and it's kind of a cool setup, although it's just not fixing any problems, unfortunately. Then they go out and they get donations. And so, we might pull a dog, and then people who can't pull, like I literally will get $1 donations, $2 I will get checks in the mail for $1.50. Like, you should have saved your stamp. But they go out and they try and get you donations to help you. And so we've managed to pull puppies I had last week were from there. Probably about 50 dogs this way. It's so hard because when, like one dog that came out went into a foster, attacked another dog, caused a few $1,000s in damage to that dog that we then had to pay. Then we have nowhere to put the dog because no foster wants an aggressive dog. Dog ends up in boarding facility, and now you're $55 a day. Well, donations run out really quick that way, and then when you get 2 and 3 and 4 dogs like this, and they're all in boarding, and you have no way to get them adopted at that point. So then what do you do with them? And then it causes a lot of stress. It causes a lot of stress. I am so lucky because I work with another group who does events all over the state and into Nevada, and they helped me place I just got a picture of my very hard dog that attacked any dog it got near. We found a home for it all the way up in Sacramento, and this other group was able to take it up there and for me and find this wonderful woman who I'm like, you can never let Izzy around another dog. She's like, I don't like people, so that works for me. Pictures, I got Halloween pictures of Izzy dressed up, and this dog, I was like, what am I going to do with this dog? And so they're all these people, everybody involved are very well-meaning. I've never heard of this before, and this year, but we've seen this. All the rescues out here are getting calls. Like, they just go out and they'll find any rescue they can, but then they pull you in, and pretty soon you've got like 30 dogs out there, and you're like managing. It's like balls in the air.
Yeah.
This one's got this, and this one's got this, and this one bit this, and this one, and it's wonderful that they're saving so many dogs. It just isn't solving a problem. Like, it just highlights that these dogs are coming in, and there's nothing to keep it from happening over and over and over. Like, as far as I know, there's like nothing in California. There may be some legislation on the books, I don't know, or things coming down the pike. I don't know of any that's going to help with this, and I'm not even sure if I have any solutions. But these shelters it's just a slaughterhouse. It's put a lot more pressure on me this year than I thought it would. I mean, it's just devastating.
What would you say is the one thing that keeps you going when you have days that you feel too heavy? Like, what's your secret? Because this is a lot.
I drink a lot.
Yeah, let's have a glass of wine. I feel like, I would imagine. I mean,
I do.
And you have a great husband.
Yeah, he's perfect. He's really great. But I just, you don't, I don't know. And again, it is what it is. You just don't have a choice, but sometimes I've definitely pulled back a lot from the Apple Valley dogs because I'm like, I'm just finding that I don't have a solution. We're trying to do it a different way. Like, I'm working with somebody in Las Vegas to pull dogs from the shelter there, and I want to try and do it here in San Diego. But I don't know, I'm one of those people, like, I got to get all this done before I can then start this. So that's my next project. But for now, I've got a woman in Las Vegas who's working with the Las Vegas shelter to pull dogs from the shelter and take them to events and get them out to, whether it's PetSmart or Petco or whoever let us, Pet Food Express, and then get actual dogs from the shelter into at an adoption event and give them that exposure and maybe try and help the problem that way. But I'm not sure if that's gonna help her, because they're all big dogs. They're all big dogs. Almost all of them are big dogs. Not all, but almost all of them are big dogs. And people, they're the harder sell. Really.
Yeah. I know it's hard for someone like you, Dana, to accept praise. I mean, I keep doing it for you, but I gotta say, you are a living example of what it means to change the world. One little doggy, one child at a time, one act of kindness at
all
a time.
Because I can't stop. I can't be bored. Bored is bad. Like I said, my husband works. He's got a great job. So I'm so lucky that I get to I don't have to work. I don't have to like earn an income so I can do whatever I want. And I've been really lucky that I can do this.
If someone is listening to this, wondering if they can make a difference, what would you tell them?
I think everybody can make a difference. I think karma is real. Don't get me wrong. But I think that some people, and I've heard this from people that I've spoken to so many people who have adopted kids who are struggling. I have like agents out there, like people, like somebody who owns a restaurant downtown. He sends people to me like, oh, this family's struggling, and he'll give my pediatrician will give people my number, like they're struggling. And so I meet people all over the place, and I talk to them, and kind of one of the feelings that I will admit that I had at one point, and I think a lot of people have, that if you do something good, you will get good back, or it's going to be good. Like, and so then you adopt a kid, and you're like, and you get this kid in your house that just totally rocks your world, not in a good way. You're like, wait a minute, but I was doing something good. Wait, that's not right. Like it's supposed to be a good thing. And I think you kind of have to get that out of your head. I had a friend that was a CASA, court-appointed special advocate, and he was saying, I just expected to get a better feeling out of this. And it's like, well, that doesn't always come. Maybe it comes later. Maybe it changes your perspective so that those feelings are different. You know what I mean? So you got to have the right attitude, I think, to go into something, and it's not necessarily going to be rewarding on the surface. You're not doing it for you. You're doing it, and again, I'm very much like, I look to God, and I'm not, like, I'm Catholic, but I call myself like a closet Catholic. I don't go to church. But I grew up Catholic, and I'm spiritual, and I love God, and I spend a lot of time saying, I want to do what you want me to do. Give me, and really all this has been, what can I do for you? What can I do for you? What can I do for you? And I hope I will always feel that way. But you're not necessarily going to get back right away, instantly, this karma of, life's not Disney. I always say this to people, like, they're like, Disney has totally warped us. Every single Disney character is an orphan. Every single one. And they're all gorgeous and cute and sweet, and they're all appreciative, and they're all pathetic, and they're all, at the end of the day, it's always wonderful. And, that's not the real world. The real world is not Disney. Disney has done us a very big disservice in that, that kids, orphans, whatever it is, homeless dogs, are all going to be perfect and happy and sweet and appreciative. It's just life doesn't work that way. But then you find something that will work with you, like whether it's feeding the homeless, or or dogs or kids or whatever it is. It can be anything. It can be taking toys to Children's Hospital. That's freaking awesome. So you kind of have to find your level of what you can handle, what you can stand, because some of this stuff is not, like working at a battered women's shelter. You're not going to feel good. You're not going to get a reward from that. It's great, and you should do it. Get it out of your head that it's, there's sunshine and rainbows on the other end of some good deed. I hope that's for everybody. That has not been my experience, and for most people I know, at least from the adoption and even from the dog side of things, I don't know many people in rescue that end the day feeling good. I get it. I say I probably get it better than most, because with puppies, like, I'm giving people like a puppy and they're happy, and it's really cool to watch that. So that's awesome. But there's so many bad things that we see, and so many bad things where, feeling good isn't the outcome. Really, you have to make it the outcome. Like, you really have to think about it. You have to kind of dig deep to get there. On the surface, it's not that great. Not right away, anyway. It might be years. Your reward might be years down the pipe.
This dumb light is killing me. Goodness. Well,
I know. I hope I'm not too down. Like, I hope I'm not too.
No, you're real. This is not. Life isn't sunshine.
Sadly real.
What you're doing is hard. That's why no one else does it, or not a lot of people do it.
One thing I will give myself credit for in this world is I've been available to people, and when people have trouble. I don't judge. I just tell them my story, and most of them will come back on the other end and be like, thank you so much, I thought I was crazy. Because nobody tells you that kids, everyone says, oh, kids are resilient. It's the stupidest thing anybody ever said. Kids aren't resilient. Kids break so freaking easy, and once they're broken, it's so hard to put them back together. It's I think that's the biggest fallacy that I've ever heard in my life. And kids are resilient. No, they're not. You know what I mean? No, they're not. And so you get all these parents that are coming home with these kids, and they're like, what's wrong with me? What am I doing wrong? And it's like, you're not. It's you didn't do this. You didn't cause this. Whatever happened before you got them caused this. Whether that was, abuse or poverty or whatever it was. So I just, I actually, and I love Dr. Phil. Don't get me wrong, I really do. But he had this woman on who I think she had a son from Russia, and he was just lambasting her because this was so many years ago. This is probably 18 years ago that he was on, and he was like, "You need to be a better parent. You need to be a better parent." And I actually wrote him a letter, and I'm like,
love that.
No idea what you're talking about. You have no idea, and most people didn't. I think
I love that.
I hope people are more aware now. I really do. I think anything to do with mental illness, whether it's from trauma or from adoption, is so misunderstood and so hush-hush. I mean, you're just like, come on, this is life. Why do we have to, why do we have to judge? Why do we have to, how about we just support? And that I have been able to do. I think I've done a pretty good job being support to a lot of people. And I've gotten calls all hours of the day and night from people, and I'm like, it's normal. It's normal. It's not you. It's not you. It's a kid with trauma, this kid with mental illness, whatever it is. Quit being so hard on yourself.
Yeah.
None of us are. We're all hard on ourselves because we're parents. But that I will say I feel pretty good about, that I've been available to people, and I hope that what advice I give them is and most of them will come back and be like, thank you, because I thought I was crazy. But nobody else told me what was really happening. And again, it's all, I've spent way too much time at therapists, and it's like, I understand, pathways that don't develop in the brain because kids don't get what they need at a young age, or, what trauma does to trust and love and those kind of things. I've read a lot about it. I don't have a degree, but, I've lived it every day and I can see it.
Dana, your story is nothing short of extraordinary, and I have been so honored to have you on the show today. I mean,
thank you.
Sorry,
I laugh when I'm embarrassed. I laugh when I'm embarrassed.
No, that's okay. I mean, you just give yourself day in and day out, and the kind of goodness we all need more of. I want you to know that while you may not see it, you are changing the world. Honestly, like, this world is so full of this. I hate this light. Good Lord. You're just changing lives in ways I don't know if you'll ever fully realize, because you're just too humble. But to anyone listening, if Dana's story touched you today as much as it has me, I encourage you to find a way to give love and to make a difference in your own way. Dana, I want to, before we go, get the name of your organizations, that if someone wants to donate to you, or an organization that you're a part of, if you could give that to me. Is there a website that you have, Dana?
We do. It's ARRF San Diego.org. ARRFSandiego.org. Everybody.
See?
ARRF.
Got you. And I'll put that.
Resource Foundation. Everyone gets that wrong. I've gotten donations for AARF many times, but we are ARRF, ARRF San Diego.
I will put that in the description. And again, we need more people like you, Dana. I know your heart will continue to touch lives for years to come. I thank you. God bless you.
It was so nice to talk to you. And I hope Odie, now Sam, is doing wonderful. Keep the pictures coming.
He is.
Yay. Tell me when you're ready for another.
Okay. Don't tell my man that. I brought Sam home and he was not happy. And then now he's in love with the dog. In love.
I have a mini American Eskimo that needs a home. So those were my latest.
Oh, how old is he?
6 months. Oh my Lord, what is he?
Oh my God, he looks like Sam. The reason why I'm saying that is because Sam is really sad. So
Yeah.
he's yelling no. Thank you, Dana.